A beautiful American archaeologist vanishes during a desert excavation. Hours later, she awakens in 800 BCE, alone, confused, and marked by an ancient curse. What she doesn't know is something saw her arrive. Now she's being hunted by Zareth, an undead figure with glowing green eyes and a frozen skull face driven by hunger. As she runs through crumbling temples and war-torn villages, a warrior named Kale risks everything to save her. Time shifts. Shadows follow. Each step brings her closer to the truth, or to him. This is not just a legend, it's survival, and it starts now. My name's Alira, and I don't expect anyone to believe me. I was an archaeology student, raised in Denver, driven by a hunger for discovery. 2 months ago, I joined a dig team near the Four Corners. Our target was an unrecorded burial mound, hidden deep within a canyon that locals didn't talk about. Something about bad ground, old spirits. The day we uncovered the obsidian seal, everything shifted. Time didn't feel right. The light changed. I remember stepping down into the tomb, then waking up in a world that wasn't mine. The air was drier, the sky burned orange, and the trees, twisted, unnatural. I wasn't in New Mexico anymore. I later learned the year was roughly 800 BCE. I had crossed into an ancient civilization long buried by time, filled with rituals, stone temples, and war. I met them within hours. A girl named Ahea, probably my age, gave me water and covered me with her shawl. Her eyes didn't question who I was, as if she'd seen strangers like me before. There was also Kale, a man built like a storm, calm voice, sharp instincts. He didn't trust me, not at first, but when night fell, he stayed close. That first night, I heard it, heavy breathing not far beyond the trees. Kale whispered a name in a language I didn't know, but his tone said everything. Fear. By morning we were running. Something had found us. I caught a glimpse when I turned back. It was tall, inhuman. A skull where a face should be, with twin green eyes glowing like coals beneath frost. Its teeth, long, animal-like, were bared in silence. It didn't walk, it glided. Kale called him Zareth, a cursed man turned beast, bound by hunger and ancient magic. No blades, no fire. Nothing could stop him. Only a sacred stone, long stolen, could weaken his hold. They said Zareth was once a guardian of their people, betrayed by kings and consumed by vengeance. Now, he wandered the ruins of fallen cities, whispering names of the dead, luring souls with dreams. The more he fed, the more he remembered who he was. He hunted me because I had crossed the seal. A mark was left on me, a heat in my chest that pulsed every time he came close. I couldn't hide. We ran across villages under siege. There was war in this land, not just between men, but beliefs. Some called Zareth a punishment from the sky gods. Others worshipped him in secret, leaving offerings of flowers and ash. One afternoon, as we crossed the river valley, we were ambushed by riders in gold masks. Their leader, Roan, recognized my voice, said he'd heard it in dreams since he was a child, that I wasn't supposed to be here, but I had come all the same. They believed I was part of a prophecy, the Pale One who would awaken the Guardian or destroy it. I didn't believe any of it. I just wanted to go home. But every time I looked into Kale's eyes, I saw something else, a reason to stay alive, a reason to fight. On the third night, Zareth found us. His shadow slid across the walls before we saw him. Ahea screamed. Kale threw a burning stick, but it passed through. The cold that followed turned our breaths into crystals. Zareth didn't attack right away. He watched me, just stood there silent, as if recognizing something familiar. Then the wind stopped, and he moved. Kale said the mountains used to sing before the sky forgot them. I didn't understand him at the time, but standing at the edge of that forgotten world, I started hearing it too. Not music, more like a hum in the stone, a vibration through my bones. We had been moving for days, crossing hills of dry grass and broken trees. Ahea kept glancing behind us, not in fear, but in quiet anticipation. She said Zareth would come again. He always did. 3 nights ago, we lost Vayon. He was a young scout, barely older than me. He wandered from camp to relieve himself and never came back. By morning, there were no tracks, only a scorch mark in the frost and the faint scent of burnt cedar. That was the first time I saw Kale truly shaken. He tightened the rope around his chest, checked the silver pendant he wore, then whispered something I didn't catch. I didn't ask. It felt like I wasn't supposed to know yet. The next morning, the air turned cold again. Not the kind that stings, but the kind that wraps around your heart. We found signs near the riverbank, a path where the grass had been flattened, burned at the tips. Something had passed through, something heavy, something watching. That evening, as we camped near the ruins of an ancient temple, Ahea told me more. Zareth was once a healer, respected, loved, until his soul cracked open during the famine. She didn't say what he did, just that when the snow came early and the gods fell silent, he changed. His bones didn't rot, his voice turned to ash, and his hunger grew. Kale believed the ancient city beneath us had answers, that if we reached its heart, we might find a way to break the curse, to sever the thread binding Zareth to me, because I felt it too. Every time he drew near, my chest grew tight, my vision blurred, like part of me was being pulled toward him. We reached the threshold just after dusk. The doorway was carved into the mountain, hidden by vines and time. No one had entered in generations. Ahea stepped forward first, then me. Kale came last, carrying a torch. Inside, the air was warm, still. The walls shimmered with faded murals, stars, beasts, and faces with eyes scratched out. We moved slowly. The floor beneath us cracked with every step. Then I felt it. Not wind, not sound, movement. From the dark ahead, two lights emerged, not flames. Eyes, green, piercing, unblinking. Kale pushed me behind him. His grip was firm, unshaking. Ahea raised a bowl of herbs, whispering something in the old tongue. Zareth stepped into the firelight, his form clearer now. The skull was cracked on one side, his skin stretched too thin across a body that didn't breathe. He looked straight at me. No anger, no hatred, just recognition. He raised one hand. The stones under our feet trembled. The murals shifted as if they were alive. And the seal on my wrist, something I hadn't noticed before, began to glow. Kale shouted something and threw the torch. The flame exploded into light, revealing a staircase behind the altar. He grabbed my hand. We ran. Ahea followed, her chant turning to screams as the ground shook behind us. Zareth didn't chase like before. He drifted, silent, closer, faster. Every time I looked back, he was nearer, yet never seemed to move. I stumbled once. Kale lifted me without slowing. The stairs led deeper, into a chamber bathed in blue light. A crystal stood in its center, pulsing like a heartbeat. I couldn't tell if it was real or illusion. Ahea gasped, said the light was wrong, that the crystal had been dim for centuries. Now it called to someone. Zareth stopped at the entrance. He didn't cross, just stood there, watching. The glow on my wrist faded, my breath slowed. Kale turned to me, his voice calm but urgent. He said we had to choose, touch the crystal and see what fate it gave, or leave and keep running. I stepped forward, my fingers hovered inches above it. I felt heat, cold, memories that weren't mine. Then I touched it. Touching the crystal was like falling, not physically, but somewhere deeper. My body stood still, but my mind unraveled. Images flashed, a burning city, a frozen lake, faces I didn't know, speaking a language I somehow understood. When I came back to myself, Kale was staring at me differently, not with suspicion, but with something heavier. Respect, maybe, or fear. Ahea looked pale. She said I spoke in the old tongue while the crystal lit up. She said the mountain heard me. We didn't talk much after that. The temple shifted behind us, walls creaking without wind. Zareth had vanished, but his presence didn't. I could feel it brushing the edges of thought, just out of reach. That night, we stayed in an abandoned watchtower above the cliffs. The stars were brighter than I'd ever seen. Kale sat beside me, sharpening a piece of wood into a smooth point. Not a weapon, a gift, maybe. He didn't explain, I didn't ask. Then came the voices, not close, just beyond the valley, like a chorus echoing through hollow stone. Ahea said they were not the dead, they were worse. Guardians left behind to serve Zareth, bound by silence, drawn to warmth. We left at dawn. The trees had changed. The path we used to descend the ridge was gone, replaced by black bark and soil that steamed in the cold. I noticed small symbols carved into the trunks, repeated patterns, circles with lines, eyes with no pupils. Midday, we met two strangers, a man and a girl no older than 16. They stood in the clearing like they were waiting for us. The man, Elric, claimed to be from the southern plateau, said he had seen me in dreams since childhood. The girl, Nema, stayed quiet. Her eyes never left me. Kale didn't trust them, but Ahea said we had no choice. The forest behind us had closed, literally. Where we came from was now a wall of roots and rock. Elric guided us through a narrow ravine where the air grew heavy. Nema began to hum, a low tone that made the trees vibrate. She never stopped. We reached a canyon that had no end. The path split. Elric turned to me and said only I could choose, left or right. I didn't know why, but I pointed right. The others followed without a word. As we walked, the shadows grew sharper. Everything sounded clearer, footsteps, breath, heartbeat. I glanced back once and saw something tall and still standing at the fork behind us. Zareth, or a memory of him. Night came early. We found shelter in the remains of a stone hut built into the rock. It smelled of cedar and damp earth. Inside I found markings, the same from the trees, dozens of them, burned into the stone. Kale stayed outside to keep watch. Elric sat across from me, watching quietly. He asked what I saw when I touched the crystal. I told him the truth, not everything, but enough. He said I carried more than memory, that something had awakened, something tied to Zareth's past, and if I didn't confront it, it would pull me under. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear but from knowing I wasn't the same. I dreamed of snow, of standing on a frozen lake alone while voices whispered from beneath the ice, not words, just feeling, hunger. At sunrise, Nima handed me a stone, smooth, dark red, warm to the touch. She whispered one word, return. I didn't understand, but I kept it. We left the canyon that morning and found ourselves at the edge of an enormous basin. Bones lined the ridge. Not human, not animal, something in between. The wind didn't blow there. The air pressed inward. Kale stopped walking. He said this was the final threshold, that beyond the basin was where Zareth had been created, or buried, or both. Ahea trembled. Elric placed a hand on her shoulder, and I stood there, silent, holding a stone that felt like a heartbeat. We crossed the basin before the sky turned gray. There was no sun above, only a soft, humming cloud cover that never moved. The ground beneath us crunched like glass, even though it was dry and bare. Elric said this place was sacred once, before it was taken. Ahea walked beside me, quietly brushing the air with her fingers like she could feel what we couldn't see. Nima kept her stone close to her chest, whispering into it now and then. I didn't ask what she said. It didn't feel like something meant for me. Halfway across, Kale stopped. He placed his palm on a flat black stone, eyes closed. When he turned to face me, his voice was steady. This was the last place the sky ever spoke, he said. After that, the gods withdrew. I thought he was speaking in metaphor, but the more time passed, the more I wondered if he meant it literally. Time didn't work right here. We walked for hours, yet the ridge behind us never shrank. And I noticed something else. None of us cast a shadow. Elric guided us toward the western edge of the basin, where the ground dipped into a sinkhole lined with silver roots. That's where we saw it. A mark etched deep into the rock, the same symbol that had appeared on my wrist after touching the crystal. A circle split into 4 sections with a single dot in the center. Kale knelt down to study it. Nima stood still as if held in place. Ahea whispered, "That was where the first offering was made." She didn't explain what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We set up camp beside the stone. Elric built a low fire using strange twigs that sparked but gave no heat. He said true warmth would wake what still slept beneath. That night, I dreamed again, not as myself but as someone else. A man standing before a mirror that reflected nothing, holding a bowl, offering his name. When I woke, Kale was gone. So was Nima. Ahea was already up, her eyes fixed on the far ridge. She said nothing, just started walking. Elric followed, silent. I didn't understand, but I followed too. We found Kale near a stone arch, half buried in ash. He looked pale, sweat on his brow despite the cold. Nima stood in front of him, holding her stone toward the archway like it was repelling something we couldn't see. And then the wind returned. It wasn't strong, just present, real. With it came a smell like damp soil and lightning. Zareth was near. We didn't need to say it. We all felt it. The air thickened, the stone pulsed, the arch trembled. A low sound came from beneath the earth, deep and rhythmic like a breath. Kale stood and told us we couldn't go forward without giving something. He didn't mean an object. He meant memory, intention, identity. Elric offered his voice. He spoke a story, 1 sentence long, then went quiet. Ahea gave her fear. Nima, her dreams. When it was my turn, I hesitated. Then I stepped forward and gave my real name. Not the one on paper, the one I never said aloud, the one only my grandmother ever called me. The arch opened, and what stood beyond wasn't a tunnel. It was a sky, a red sky without stars, with roots that stretched across the clouds like veins. Kale said we had to cross it on foot. The others didn't argue. I stepped through last. As I did, I felt something peel off me. Not pain, not even loss. Just a sense that part of me would never come back. We walked under that sky for what felt like days. And though I couldn't see him, I knew Zareth was walking there too. Somewhere beside us, matching our pace. He wasn't chasing us anymore. He was leading. The sky above us never changed. It wasn't day or night, just a constant dim red, like light filtered through skin. We kept walking because there was no other choice. No one spoke much. Even the air felt like it was listening. Nima walked ahead with her stone. It glowed faintly now, pulling her in a direction none of us could see. Elric followed close behind, muttering prayers under his breath. Ahea stayed near me, humming a melody I'd heard before but couldn't place. Kale walked beside me in silence. He didn't look at me, just forward. I wondered what he saw. I wondered if he still believed we were going to make it back. The ground shifted as we moved. Sometimes it felt like sand, sometimes like water beneath our feet. At one point, the sky flickered, and for just a moment, I thought I saw myself standing far ahead, still and staring back. I didn't tell anyone. We reached a ridge shaped like a spine. At the top stood an arch made of tree roots, bleached white and humming like they were alive. Nima stopped. She said the place ahead was where the mirror broke. Elric warned us that we couldn't pass as we were. Kale pulled a pouch from around his neck and dropped it on the ground. Inside was ash. Ahea stepped forward and pressed her forehead to the earth. I stood there, not knowing what I had left to give. Then I heard my own voice call my name. But it wasn't me. It came from beneath the ridge. Slow, drawn out, familiar. Zareth. He was here. Not behind us, not beside us. Inside the place we were heading. The others felt it too. No one said anything, but I saw it in their faces. The weight returned, that feeling of being watched from the inside out. We passed through the arch. The light dimmed, the sound faded. Even our footsteps were silent now. The trees around us bent inward. They weren't dead, but they weren't growing either. They were frozen mid-movement, as if trying to turn away from something long ago. Ahead stood a pool. Black, perfectly still, no reflection. Nima stopped walking. She pointed at it and whispered one word, memory. I stepped closer. My wrist began to glow again. I looked into the pool and saw a room. Stone walls, candles. A woman kneeling. Her face looked like mine, but older, worn. She was whispering a name over and over in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. Zareth wasn't born. He was made, and not by darkness, but by love twisted out of shape. He had given himself to protect someone, and when they were lost, he refused to forget. That was his curse. The pool rippled. Behind me, Kale stepped forward and said the pool was asking me to choose, to take the memory or leave it behind. Ahea said once a memory is taken, it becomes truth. Even if it wasn't mine, I reached in. The water was warm, and when I pulled my hand back, it was dry. Then we heard it, a soft tone, not quite a voice, and a shape stepped from the trees. Not fast, not angry, just present. Zareth. He didn't speak. He didn't raise his arms. He just looked at me, and something passed between us. Not fear, not forgiveness, just recognition. He stepped toward the pool, looked into it, and for the first time I saw his reflection. It wasn't a monster, it was a man. Zareth stood by the pool, his reflection still and human, but his body remained twisted, cold mist rising from his shoulders. We watched, unsure if we should move or wait. The silence wasn't empty. It pressed on our skin like weight. Kale stepped forward first. Not aggressively, but like someone approaching a memory they had tried to forget. Ahea followed, holding her hand over her heart. Nima remained behind, eyes closed, fingers moving through the air like she was writing. Elric whispered something in a language I didn't know, then turned to me and said, "This was the center, the place where time folded, where stories either ended or repeated." I looked at Zareth again. His head turned slightly, but he didn't speak. He just waited. I moved closer and felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, not from danger, but from something ancient waking up. The reflection in the water shifted. It wasn't just Zareth anymore. It was all of us, blurred, intertwined. The longer I looked, the more I felt like I had been here before. Not in this body, but in some other form. Kale's voice broke through. He said the truth was never about stopping Zareth. It was about understanding why he remained, why he never crossed into whatever waited beyond. Ahea reached out to touch his shoulder. Zareth allowed it, and in that moment the air changed. The mist pulled inward. His skull-like face cracked slightly, revealing skin that shimmered like stone. He was fading, but not vanishing, transforming. Suddenly, the ground opened behind the pool. A path of smooth obsidian led downward, lined with glowing roots. Elric looked at me. "It's open now," he said, "but not for long." We followed the path in silence. No one spoke. The deeper we went, the warmer it became. Not heat from flame, but from memory. I could feel moments brushing against me, laughter, grief, choices I hadn't made. The corridor ended in a wide chamber, circular and vast. At the center stood a pillar of woven vines suspended in air. Inside it floated a figure, not Zareth, someone else. A woman. She looked like me, or rather, who I might become. Her eyes opened slowly as we entered, and she spoke a single sentence. "I've been waiting for you." Kale stood still, breath shallow. Ahaya fell to one knee. Elric turned away, eyes wet. Nima whispered something under her breath and vanished into light. The woman said her name was Ellen, that I was her echo, that every few centuries the world called for a mirror to return balance, not to fight darkness but to understand it. Zareth had never been the enemy, he had been the door, and I, unknowingly, had been the key. She reached out. I stepped forward. My chest ached like something was being pulled loose, but I didn't resist. Behind me, the others faded. The chamber dissolved into light. I remember one last thing before the silence came. Zareth, standing at the edge of the pool, looking peaceful for the first time. A beautiful American archaeologist vanishes during a desert excavation. Hours later, she awakens in 800 BCE, alone, confused, and marked by an ancient curse. What she doesn't know is something saw her arrive. Now she's being hunted by Zareth, an undead figure with glowing green eyes and a frozen skull face, driven by hunger. As she runs through crumbling temples and war-torn villages, a warrior named Kale risks everything to save her. Time shifts. Shadows follow. Each step brings her closer to the truth, or to him. This is not just a legend, it's survival, and it starts now. My name's Alira, and I don't expect anyone to believe me. I was an archaeology student, raised in Denver, driven by a hunger for discovery. 2 months ago, I joined a dig team near the Four Corners. Our target was an unrecorded burial mound, hidden deep within a canyon that locals didn't talk about. Something about bad ground, old spirits. The day we uncovered the obsidian seal, everything shifted. Time didn't feel right. The light changed. I remember stepping down into the tomb, then waking up in a world that wasn't mine. The air was drier, the sky burned orange, and the trees, twisted, unnatural. I wasn't in New Mexico anymore. I later learned the year was roughly 800 BCE. I had crossed into an ancient civilization long buried by time, filled with rituals, stone temples, and war. I met them within hours. A girl named Ahaya, probably my age, gave me water and covered me with her shawl. Her eyes didn't question who I was, as if she'd seen strangers like me before. There was also Kale, a man built like a storm, calm voice, sharp instincts. He didn't trust me, not at first, but when night fell, he stayed close. That first night, I heard it, heavy breathing not far beyond the trees. Kale whispered a name in a language I didn't know, but his tone said everything. Fear. By morning, we were running. Something had found us. I caught a glimpse when I turned back. It was tall, inhuman. A skull where a face should be, with twin green eyes glowing like coals beneath frost. Its teeth, long, animal-like, were bared in silence. It didn't walk, it glided. Kale called him Zareth, a cursed man turned beast, bound by hunger and ancient magic. No blades, no fire. Nothing could stop him. Only a sacred stone, long stolen, could weaken his hold. They said Zareth was once a guardian of their people, betrayed by kings and consumed by vengeance. Now, he wandered the ruins of fallen cities, whispering names of the dead, luring souls with dreams. The more he fed, the more he remembered who he was. He hunted me because I had crossed the seal. A mark was left on me, a heat in my chest that pulsed every time he came close. I couldn't hide. We ran across villages under siege. There was war in this land, not just between men but beliefs. Some called Zareth a punishment from the sky gods. Others worshipped him in secret, leaving offerings of flowers and ash. One afternoon, as we crossed the river valley, we were ambushed by riders in gold masks. Their leader, Roan, recognized my voice, said he'd heard it in dreams since he was a child, that I wasn't supposed to be here, but I had come all the same. They believed I was part of a prophecy, the Pale One who would awaken the Guardian or destroy it. I didn't believe any of it. I just wanted to go home. But every time I looked into Kale's eyes, I saw something else. A reason to stay alive. A reason to fight. On the third night, Zareth found us. His shadow slid across the walls before we saw him. Ahea screamed. Kale threw a burning stick, but it passed through. The cold that followed turned our breaths into crystals. Zareth didn't attack right away. He watched me, just stood there silent, as if recognizing something familiar. Then the wind stopped, and he moved. Kale said the mountains used to sing before the sky forgot them. I didn't understand him at the time, but standing at the edge of that forgotten world, I started hearing it too. Not music, more like a hum in the stone, a vibration through my bones. We had been moving for days, crossing hills of dry grass and broken trees. Ahea kept glancing behind us, not in fear, but in quiet anticipation. She said Zareth would come again. He always did. 3 nights ago, we lost Vayon. He was a young scout, barely older than me. He wandered from camp to relieve himself and never came back. By morning, there were no tracks, only a scorch mark in the frost and the faint scent of burnt cedar. That was the first time I saw Kale truly shaken. He tightened the rope around his chest, checked the silver pendant he wore, then whispered something I didn't catch. I didn't ask. It felt like I wasn't supposed to know yet. The next morning, the air turned cold again. Not the kind that stings, but the kind that wraps around your heart. We found signs near the riverbank, a path where the grass had been flattened, burned at the tips. Something had passed through, something heavy, something watching. That evening, as we camped near the ruins of an ancient temple, Ahea told me more. Zareth was once a healer, respected, loved, until his soul cracked open during the famine. She didn't say what he did, just that when the snow came early and the gods fell silent, he changed. His bones didn't rot, his voice turned to ash, and his hunger grew. Kale believed the ancient city beneath us had answers, that if we reached its heart, we might find a way to break the curse, to sever the thread binding Zareth to me, because I felt it too. Every time he drew near, my chest grew tight, my vision blurred, like part of me was being pulled toward him. We reached the threshold just after dusk. The doorway was carved into the mountain, hidden by vines and time. No one had entered in generations. Ahea stepped forward first, then me. Kale came last, carrying a torch. Inside, the air was warm, still. The walls shimmered with faded murals, stars, beasts, and faces with eyes scratched out. We moved slowly. The floor beneath us cracked with every step. Then I felt it. Not wind, not sound, movement. From the dark ahead, 2 lights emerged, not flames. Eyes, green, piercing, unblinking. Kale pushed me behind him. His grip was firm, unshaking. Ahea raised a bowl of herbs, whispering something in the old tongue. Zareth stepped into the firelight, his form clearer now. The skull was cracked on one side, his skin stretched too thin across a body that didn't breathe. He looked straight at me. No anger, no hatred, just recognition. He raised one hand. The stones under our feet trembled. The murals shifted as if they were alive. And the seal on my wrist, something I hadn't noticed before, began to glow. Kale shouted something and threw the torch. The flame exploded into light, revealing a staircase behind the altar. He grabbed my hand. We ran. Ahea followed, her chant turning to screams as the ground shook behind us. Zareth didn't chase like before. He drifted, silent, closer, faster. Every time I looked back, he was nearer, yet never seemed to move. I stumbled once. Kale lifted me without slowing. The stairs led deeper, into a chamber bathed in blue light. A crystal stood in its center, pulsing like a heartbeat. I couldn't tell if it was real or illusion. Ahea gasped, said the light was wrong, that the crystal had been dim for centuries. Now it called to someone. Zareth stopped at the entrance. He didn't cross, just stood there, watching. The glow on my wrist faded, my breath slowed. Kale turned to me, his voice calm but urgent. He said we had to choose. Touch the crystal and see what fate it gave, or leave and keep running. I stepped forward, my fingers hovered inches above it. I felt heat, cold, memories that weren't mine. Then I touched it. Touching the crystal was like falling, not physically, but somewhere deeper. My body stood still, but my mind unraveled. Images flashed, a burning city, a frozen lake, faces I didn't know, speaking a language I somehow understood. When I came back to myself, Kale was staring at me differently. Not with suspicion, but with something heavier. Respect, maybe, or fear. Ahea looked pale. She said I spoke in the old tongue while the crystal lit up. She said the mountain heard me. We didn't talk much after that. The temple shifted behind us, walls creaking without wind. Zareth had vanished, but his presence didn't. I could feel it brushing the edges of thought, just out of reach. That night, we stayed in an abandoned watchtower above the cliffs. The stars were brighter than I'd ever seen. Kale sat beside me, sharpening a piece of wood into a smooth point. Not a weapon, a gift, maybe. He didn't explain, I didn't ask. Then came the voices, not close, just beyond the valley, like a chorus echoing through hollow stone. Ahea said they were not the dead, they were worse. Guardians left behind to serve Zareth, bound by silence, drawn to warmth. We left at dawn. The trees had changed. The path we used to descend the ridge was gone, replaced by black bark and soil that steamed in the cold. I noticed small symbols carved into the trunks, repeated patterns, circles with lines, eyes with no pupils. Midday, we met two strangers, a man and a girl no older than 16. They stood in the clearing like they were waiting for us. The man, Elric, claimed to be from the southern plateau, said he had seen me in dreams since childhood. The girl, Nima, stayed quiet. Her eyes never left me. Kale didn't trust them, but Ahea said we had no choice. The forest behind us had closed, literally. Where we came from was now a wall of roots and rock. Elric guided us through a narrow ravine where the air grew heavy. Nima began to hum, a low tone that made the trees vibrate. She never stopped. We reached a canyon that had no end. The path split. Elric turned to me and said only I could choose, left or right. I didn't know why, but I pointed right. The others followed without a word. As we walked, the shadows grew sharper. Everything sounded clearer, footsteps, breath, heartbeat. I glanced back once and saw something tall and still standing at the fork behind us. Zareth, or a memory of him. Night came early. We found shelter in the remains of a stone hut built into the rock. It smelled of cedar and damp earth. Inside I found markings, the same from the trees, dozens of them, burned into the stone. Kale stayed outside to keep watch. Elric sat across from me, watching quietly. He asked what I saw when I touched the crystal. I told him the truth. Not everything, but enough. He said I carried more than memory, that something had awakened, something tied to Zareth's past. And if I didn't confront it, it would pull me under. That night I couldn't sleep, not from fear, but from knowing I wasn't the same. I dreamed of snow, of standing on a frozen lake alone while voices whispered from beneath the ice, not words, just feeling, hunger. At sunrise, Nima handed me a stone, smooth, dark red, warm to the touch. She whispered one word, return. I didn't understand, but I kept it. We left the canyon that morning and found ourselves at the edge of an enormous basin. Bones lined the ridge. Not human, not animal, something in between. The wind didn't blow there. The air pressed inward. Kale stopped walking. He said this was the final threshold, that beyond the basin was where Zareth had been created, or buried, or both. Ahea trembled. Elric placed a hand on her shoulder, and I stood there, silent, holding a stone that felt like a heartbeat. We crossed the basin before the sky turned gray. There was no sun above, only a soft, humming cloud cover that never moved. The ground beneath us crunched like glass, even though it was dry and bare. Elric said this place was sacred once, before it was taken. Ahea walked beside me, quietly brushing the air with her fingers like she could feel what we couldn't see. Nima kept her stone close to her chest, whispering into it now and then. I didn't ask what she said. It didn't feel like something meant for me. Halfway across, Kale stopped. He placed his palm on a flat black stone, eyes closed. When he turned to face me, his voice was steady. This was the last place the sky ever spoke, he said. After that, the gods withdrew. I thought he was speaking in metaphor, but the more time passed, the more I wondered if he meant it literally. Time didn't work right here. We walked for hours, yet the ridge behind us never shrank. And I noticed something else. None of us cast a shadow. Elric guided us toward the western edge of the basin, where the ground dipped into a sinkhole lined with silver roots. That's where we saw it. A mark etched deep into the rock, the same symbol that had appeared on my wrist after touching the crystal. A circle split into 4 sections with a single dot in the center. Kale knelt down to study it. Nima stood still as if held in place. Ahea whispered, "That was where the first offering was made." She didn't explain what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We set up camp beside the stone. Elric built a low fire using strange twigs that sparked but gave no heat. He said true warmth would wake what still slept beneath. That night, I dreamed again, not as myself, but as someone else. A man standing before a mirror that reflected nothing, holding a bowl, offering his name. When I woke, Kale was gone. So was Nima. Ahea was already up, her eyes fixed on the far ridge. She said nothing, just started walking. Elric followed, silent. I didn't understand, but I followed too. We found Kale near a stone arch, half buried in ash. He looked pale, sweat on his brow despite the cold. Nima stood in front of him, holding her stone toward the archway like it was repelling something we couldn't see. And then the wind returned. It wasn't strong, just present, real. With it came a smell like damp soil and lightning. Zareth was near. We didn't need to say it. We all felt it. The air thickened, the stone pulsed, the arch trembled. A low sound came from beneath the earth, deep and rhythmic like a breath. Kale stood and told us we couldn't go forward without giving something. He didn't mean an object. He meant memory, intention, identity. Elric offered his voice. He spoke a story, one sentence long, then went quiet. Ahea gave her fear, Nima her dreams. When it was my turn, I hesitated. Then I stepped forward and gave my real name. Not the one on paper, the one I never said aloud, the one only my grandmother ever called me. The arch opened, and what stood beyond wasn't a tunnel. It was a sky, a red sky without stars, with roots that stretched across the clouds like veins. Kale said we had to cross it on foot. The others didn't argue. I stepped through last. As I did, I felt something peel off me. Not pain, not even loss, just a sense that part of me would never come back. We walked under that sky for what felt like days, and though I couldn't see him, I knew Zareth was walking there too. Somewhere beside us, matching our pace. He wasn't chasing us anymore. He was leading. The sky above us never changed. It wasn't day or night, just a constant dim red, like light filtered through skin. We kept walking because there was no other choice. No one spoke much. Even the air felt like it was listening. Nima walked ahead with her stone. It glowed faintly now, pulling her in a direction none of us could see. Elric followed close behind, muttering prayers under his breath. Ahea stayed near me, humming a melody I'd heard before but couldn't place. Kale walked beside me in silence. He didn't look at me, just forward. I wondered what he saw. I wondered if he still believed we were going to make it back. The ground shifted as we moved. Sometimes it felt like sand, sometimes like water beneath our feet. At one point, the sky flickered, and for just a moment, I thought I saw myself standing far ahead, still and staring back. I didn't tell anyone. We reached a ridge shaped like a spine. At the top stood an arch made of tree roots, bleached white and humming like they were alive. Nima stopped. She said the place ahead was where the mirror broke. Elric warned us that we couldn't pass as we were. Kale pulled a pouch from around his neck and dropped it on the ground. Inside was ash. Ahea stepped forward and pressed her forehead to the earth. I stood there, not knowing what I had left to give. Then I heard my own voice call my name. But it wasn't me. It came from beneath the ridge. Slow, drawn out, familiar. Zareth. He was here. Not behind us, not beside us. Inside the place we were heading. The others felt it too. No one said anything, but I saw it in their faces. The weight returned, that feeling of being watched from the inside out. We passed through the arch. The light dimmed, the sound faded. Even our footsteps were silent now. The trees around us bent inward. They weren't dead, but they weren't growing either. They were frozen mid-movement, as if trying to turn away from something long ago. Ahead stood a pool. Black, perfectly still, no reflection. Nima stopped walking. She pointed at it and whispered one word, memory. I stepped closer. My wrist began to glow again. I looked into the pool and saw a room. Stone walls, candles. A woman kneeling. Her face looked like mine, but older, worn. She was whispering a name over and over in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. Zareth wasn't born. He was made, and not by darkness, but by love twisted out of shape. He had given himself to protect someone, and when they were lost, he refused to forget. That was his curse. The pool rippled. Behind me, Kale stepped forward and said the pool was asking me to choose, to take the memory or leave it behind. Ahea said once a memory is taken, it becomes truth. Even if it wasn't mine, I reached in. The water was warm, and when I pulled my hand back, it was dry. Then we heard it, a soft tone, not quite a voice, and a shape stepped from the trees. Not fast, not angry, just present. Zareth. He didn't speak. He didn't raise his arms. He just looked at me, and something passed between us. Not fear, not forgiveness, just recognition. He stepped toward the pool, looked into it, and for the first time I saw his reflection. It wasn't a monster, it was a man. Zareth stood by the pool, his reflection still and human, but his body remained twisted, cold mist rising from his shoulders. We watched, unsure if we should move or wait. The silence wasn't empty. It pressed on our skin like weight. Kale stepped forward first. Not aggressively, but like someone approaching a memory they had tried to forget. Ahea followed, holding her hand over her heart. Nima remained behind, eyes closed, fingers moving through the air like she was writing. Elric whispered something in a language I didn't know, then turned to me and said, "This was the center, the place where time folded, where stories either ended or repeated." I looked at Zareth again. His head turned slightly, but he didn't speak. He just waited. I moved closer and felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, not from danger, but from something ancient waking up. The reflection in the water shifted. It wasn't just Zareth anymore. It was all of us, blurred, intertwined. The longer I looked, the more I felt like I had been here before. Not in this body, but in some other form. Kale's voice broke through. He said the truth was never about stopping Zareth. It was about understanding why he remained, why he never crossed into whatever waited beyond. Ahea reached out to touch his shoulder. Zareth allowed it. And in that moment, the air changed. The mist pulled inward. His skull-like face cracked slightly, revealing skin that shimmered like stone. He was fading, but not vanishing, transforming. Suddenly, the ground opened behind the pool. A path of smooth obsidian led downward, lined with glowing roots. Elric looked at me. "It's open now," he said, "but not for long." We followed the path in silence. No one spoke. The deeper we went, the warmer it became. Not heat from flame, but from memory. I could feel moments brushing against me, laughter, grief, choices I hadn't made. The corridor ended in a wide chamber, circular and vast. At the center stood a pillar of woven vines suspended in air. Inside it floated a figure. Not Zareth, someone else. A woman. She looked like me, or rather, who I might become. Her eyes opened slowly as we entered, and she spoke a single sentence. "I've been waiting for you." Kale stood still, breath shallow. Ahea fell to one knee. Elric turned away, eyes wet. Nima whispered something under her breath and vanished into light. The woman said her name was Ellen, that I was her echo, that every few centuries the world called for a mirror to return balance, not to fight darkness, but to understand it. Zareth had never been the enemy, he had been the door, and I, unknowingly, had been the key. She reached out. I stepped forward. My chest ached like something was being pulled loose, but I didn't resist. Behind me, the others faded. The chamber dissolved into light. I remember one last thing before the silence came. Zareth, standing at the edge of the pool, looking peaceful for the first time. And then, nothing.